Happy 4th of July, bitches. I was planning on keeping this epic in my back pocket until some undetermined point in the future, and seeing as how we're uploading on America's Independence Day, I can only think of one HFY to read for y'alls. Billy Bob Space Trucker by Regal Legal Eagle. Other note, if you guys hear explosions in the background, those are actually fireworks, not my Andis dying. So, happy days! We're not fearing death from all the random noises coming from outside. Yay! Alright then, with that, let us begin. Billy Bob was good at his job. He'd taken it up after a tour of service in the Navy as a bomber. Knowing how Xenos hated to be isolated, humans had realized they didn't scan for small ships, and the concept of a long-term fighter bomber with single pilots was completely foreign to them. Taking advantage of this, humanity created whole squadrons of the things to terrorize core systems while their fleets or capital ships mostly fought on the defensive in their own territories. This meant humans were hard to fight on traditional Xeno terms. Instead of big capital ship battles to decide the fate of wars, they just sat around and defended their outer colonies while those hard-to-detect squadrons of fighter bombers devastated morale back home. Of course, humans could trounce most militaries once they landed anyway. A nice side effect of evolving on a high-gravity death world meant most Xenos couldn't stand a chance against them face-to-face. But that was mostly frowned upon by the Galactic Peace Corps. They wanted border conflicts to take place in space and involve as little actual invasion as possible. And humanity was trying to join peacefully rather than forcefully. Most people didn't want humans to be viewed as big mean bullies. But Billy Bob didn't mind being a bully now and then. Wars had died down since humanity had established their borders, and the Navy didn't need those fighter bombers as much as patrol craft. So Billy Bob had taken his severance pay with honorable discharge and bought himself a Longhorn, made back home on terra fucking firma. Then he signed up with a freight line and got to trucking, in space. His only companion was the long space lanes ahead, fellow space truckers on the FTL Prox band, and of course, Mittens. Mittens was a Martian marauder, genetically engineered to handle pests on the first off-world colony. He was about as big as an old Earth bobcat. His fur was a dusty red with bluish stripes, but white paws, hence the name. He was scarred all over from his many battles on the streets of Mars as a youth, before a shelter had found him. Billy Bob had picked him up from the shelter, because he liked the look of the cat, and he knew that an omnivore keeping a carnivore as a pet scared the shit out of most Xenos. Billy Bob liked dogs too, but they needed more space than he had in his Longhorn. And they'd yet to breed a dog that could learn to do its business in a space toilet and flush after. Currently, he had a cargo bay full of standard agri-colony supplies, and 3 space days to get there. He knew they weren't space days, but he hated the stupid Xeno terms for this kind of shit. He wasn't some Diplo-Corps nerd. He was a space trucker. He just added space in front of traditional human terms, and that was good enough for him. Soon enough, though, his gut began to rumble, and he sighed. I could use a quick bite. How about you, Mittens? The cat was sleeping on the co-pilot chair, and yawned, but didn't contribute to the conversation. Oh well, I'm going to stretch my legs, you lazy fuzzball. His ship shuddered as he began to peel off of the main FTL lane and spin down his engines as he moved out of the FTL lane. Soon he pulled up to a refueling station, his Longhorn dwarfed by the other massive cargo ships and Atlas. Paying the minor docking fee, he unfastened his harness and hauled his growing beer gut out of the pilot's chair. He ran a hand over his belly for a moment as he noted he needed to exercise more regularly now that he wasn't on a military diet. Shrugging it off, he walked back through the small cabin of his ship and stepped into the airlock. He ached for a smoke, but knew the rules against air toxins were strictly enforced. Pathetic Xenos couldn't handle a little tobacco smoke. But he shrugged it off and waited for the airlock to cycle. He was greeted with stale canned air that smelled of dirty Xenos and FTL fuel, as he began to walk along the gantry towards the central station. His boots, jeans, belt buckle, and plaid shirt were all entirely against the standard Xenos norms of clothing. Everyone preferred pressure suits or multifunction harnesses. Well, that wasn't his style. So he adjusted his hat with the human flag next to the good old stars and stripes on it and walked on. Most stations like this had the same layout. They consisted of a central hub with arms for cargo holders to dock at, and restaurants and other entertainment centers for lonely cargo crew to have some fun at. He had to watch his step in the lowered gravity, unless he wanted to go jumping over everyone's head and freak them out. So he decided to take a slow, long stride gait. Noting the places with sealed environments for various atmospheric needs, he found a diner that looked empty enough. He groaned at the sight of the chairs, though. They were all the ergonomic Xeno styles. He just wanted a place for his butt and a back to lean against, damn it. He looked over the options of furniture and approached the counter. Picking one that looked like a U, he tried to sit in it sideways at first, but it was too wide to comfortably straddle. Then he tried to sit in it with the arms of the U against his. He found it too tight. While he tried this, the guy behind the counter, some sort of six-armed space frog, just waited and watched. "Do you have, like, a crate or something?" The creature looked confused. "A crate of what?" "Just like a crate." "Got some crates of cans in the back?" Billy Bob got up and walked past the space frog and into the kitchen, where more surprised-looking space frogs were standing around. "Hey, wait! Just going to be a minute." He found one of the shiny metal boxes and lifted it up, walking back out with it as the space frog's eyes got even wider. Then he set it down next to the counter and sat on it. "Do you know how heavy that thing is?" "High-gravity home planet." "Oh, no wonder you're so ugly." "You're not pretty yourself, fella." "I've got 6 wives, pal. I'm gorgeous." Billy Bob eyed the creature in front of him and figured there was no counting for taste. "Well, fine. Do you have meat?" The creature shuddered for a moment, 3 bulbous sacs along his blue neck expanding for a moment. "Ugh, a carnivore, huh?" "Omnivore, thank you very much. Do you have anything resembling bacon and eggs?" He waited for the creature's implant to translate the term before he saw the blue sacs turn a little green. "That's disgustingly barbaric." Billy Bob let out a sigh. "How about protein mush and space pancakes?" It had taken Billy Bob ages to tweak his translator to understand custom input just the way he liked it. Protein mush would translate, but space pancakes wouldn't normally. But he'd be damned if he bothered to remember the Xeno term for this green flapjack-type things. "Yes, we have that." "And butter?" It was a long shot. Even the translator struggled to convey the term. "Spreadable animal fat?" "You know what? Never mind. How about space maple syrup?" "Yes, we have sugar tar." "Close enough. Coffee?" A blank face was the response. "Shit, I mean space coffee." "Dear religious figure, you'd want to consume some of that stuff in liquid form." "Yeah, is that not normal?" "No! Combat stimulants are not normal to consume as a drink." "Shit. Guess this place hasn't had a visit from our Diplocorps yet. Do you have anything with caffeine in it?" The creature looked at him warily. "We keep some space tea for visiting space foxes." He meant the Tritari, but Billy Bob thought they looked like space foxes, and as such he made his translator use the term. "Oh, good. Well, bring me some boiling water, 3 bags of that, and another glass full of ice about this big." He held up his hands to show. "Are you coming out of a hibernation cycle? That is an absurd amount of liquid." "We don't hibernate. We're just dense." The frog muttered something about the accuracy of that statement, then spoke up. "Look, do you have currency to pay for this?" Yeah. He pulled out a bill from his pocket and slapped it onto the table. "What's that?" Billy Bob looked down at First World President Schwarzenegger's face. "Sorry, wrong currency." He tucked the bill back into a pocket and pulled out a small black box. "Galactic trade cubes work here, right?" "They work everywhere." "So I hear." The frog touched the box to connect it with his implant, and after a soft beep from the machine, set about making Billy Bob his food. Once the frog carefully brought over a pot of boiling water, while using a thermal glove, Billy Bob quickly dumped the 3 bags of weak-ass space tea into it and began to brew something close to green tea. Protein mush and space pancakes weren't all that bad. In reality, protein mush was very similar to scrambled eggs, just in need of a load of salt and pepper, which no one kept in large quantities. Soon enough, the frog came back with a plate of protein mush and space pancakes. Green flapjacks covered in that caramel-like sugar tar, which really wasn't a bad name, but he still preferred space maple syrup. He reached down to the holster on his belt, pulling free a bottle of real Mexican pepper sauce, and poured some of that on the mush. When the frog squinted and leaned in, he held a hand up. "Whoa there, pal, that stuff has capsaicin in it." The frog backed up, looking horrified. "You consume chemical weapons?" "Just for flavor." The frog decided to move down the counter and clean a section of it far away from Billy Bob. He ate in peace, pouring some of the brewed tea into a glass of ice to cool it down and drink it as iced tea. The place was quiet, which suited him just fine. But soon there was another guest. Billy Bob looked over as it slipped easily into one of the ergonomic Xeno chairs. It was fairly tall, about half a foot over his head. He refused to use metric, even in space. Fairly slim, but not outrageously so. It was wearing some sort of black cloak and what looked like a survival suit underneath. It was a bipedal humanoid, but spotted 4 arms instead of 2. Its face was shrouded in a hood of the cloak, all mysterious-like. The frog seemed extra cautious with this visitor, perhaps because 2 unusual clients at once didn't bode well with him. They had a quiet conversation, ending with the frog looking down the way at Billy Bob. The figure waited for the frog to bring it a small glass of fruit drink, make that space fruit drink, and then rose from the seat, seeming to drift rather than walk towards Billy Bob. It took a seat next to him as he ate. "You come from a death world?" the voice purred out, all light and airy. He liked her already. Of course, he couldn't be sure it was a female, but the voice and figure seemed feminine to him, so why not? "Sure do." "What classification?" "I'm told the galactic standards are grade 5 water, oxygen standard, super heavy gravity, and class 8 hostile." The figure leaned back at that. "Class 8 hostile and super heavy?" "Yep." He took a bite of his eggs, mush. "What rank are you on your ship?" That made him curious. "Captain." "No support crew with you?" "No support crew. I own, fly, and fix the ship on my own." That usually surprised most Xenos, and this one seemed a little surprised as well, since it was quiet. "You're a space trucker." "What?" "I don't like the galactic term. That's what my people call it. I haul cargo around space for contracts." "On your own?" "I have a pet." "Oh." "Yep." He figured she was wondering what it was, but he decided it was best to not scare her. "Are you taking on new cargo?" "In the middle of a contract. Full cargo hold, I'm afraid." "What about passengers?" "I've got a 2-person cabin, so no. I don't have the facilities to transport 20 or 30 of your kind." "I'm alone." That caught him by surprise. Almost all civilized spacefaring species had been prey on their home planets. They needed company with familiar beings nearby, or they'd start to freak out. That was the very reason humans developed their fighter-bomber strategy. From what they'd seen, the concept of frontiersmen and wandering explorers and space truckers was foreign to them. Solitude terrified them, and then generally drove them insane. Looks like the diplomatic corps had missed a species. "What gravity are you okay with?" "Galactic standard." Sleep cycles? Eating?" 3 space hours to sleep for every 6 space hours active. Light standard omnivore." "Cat naps and snacks, eh?" "I don't know what that means." "Never mind. Where do you need to go, and when?" "I need to reach Galactic Capital Planet before the end of the space month." "That's a hell of a way to go. My species isn't even a member species yet. I'm not sure they'd let me go that far.
I have diplomatic connections.
Well, I don't know. It seems like a lot more effort than it's worth.
The figure looked ready to go on when he heard the frog gasp as some more figures entered the room. Billy Bob looked over and arched a brow. These he was going to call giant horrible space crab bugs. They had 6 lower legs, 2 upper arms, and 2 twitching mandibles, along a pointed, 4-eyed face with antennae. It was covered in some sort of jagged purple-black exoskeleton, and looked to be dripping space goo. Each had some sort of large, high-powered looking weapon in their claw-like upper arms, with a targeting computer over 2 of their eyes. Humans so far were unique in the universe for their ability to compute depth and speed in their heads. Something as simple as playing catch was nearly impossible for species without computer assistance. The Spectre Lady moved behind him, and he realized he was being dragged into something he didn't understand. He didn't like that. Ew! They skittered forward and fanned out. 6 of them took up most of the area across the diner, between him and the door. When the creature spoke, the mandibles had to part from its face to expose some flesh beneath. Billy Bob froze as he saw the hole the creatures were speaking out of. It looked like an asshole. He worked hard to keep his face straight and not burst out laughing as he quickly set his translator to refer to these creatures by some custom inputs.
Puny, ugly creatures, I am Captain Asshole of the Assface Empire. You must tread carefully or face the wrath of all Assfaces. The one behind you is our mortal enemy. My translator is telling me you're showing mirth and amusement.
The creature said the last bit with confusion as Billy Bob was laughing. It jabbed the weapon in his face.
Stop that! You will rue the day you mock Captain Assface.
I'm sorry. Your translator isn't set to my species properly. This is Fear and Terror. Really.
It looked unsure now.
Hand over the diplomat.
Look, I hate to get dragged into shit I don't understand. My species is very new to the galactic political scene, so I don't see why this is my business anyway. He didn't like these creatures, but getting humanity into a war they didn't know about wouldn't be good for him on a personal level. Then the lady behind him whispered,
I'll transfer 10 billion galactic credits to your personal account if you help me.
He always wanted to be a hero. Billy Bob yanked the bottle of pepper sauce from his holster, smashing it across Captain Asshole's face. The creatures were stunned by his speed, and Captain Asshole began to scream in pain as the hot sauce burned him. Billy Bob took the still-boiling pot of water and tossed it at another ass face, smacking it in the face as he then leapt forward with all the speed of a high-gravity death worlder. Grappling one of the creatures past the other 2 screaming ass faces, he ripped the weapon from its hand, pushed a bunch of buttons before a swarm of little pink bolts slammed into another ass face. Then he smashed the weapon into the torso of the ass face he had disarmed, cracking and splintering the exoskeleton as more goo escaped. The last 2 had leveled their weapons, and then turned their injured comrade into a massive splinter of bits and pieces. But Billy Bob was already rolling away, rising up as he ripped a table from the ground and throwing it into the 5th ass face. The 6th was swinging his weapon, waiting for the computer to give him a firing plot, but Billy Bob was too fast. Picking up one of those stupid xeno-ergonomic chairs, he leapt, swinging it overhead and down into the ass face's face. There was a crack and a snap as it slumped to the ground. There were siren sounds in the station as security had obviously detected the violence.
Cheese it, lady. I ain't going to space jail.
What does that mean?
Run for it. My ship is this way.
He began taking long hops, sailing over the heads of the other startled and frightened creatures running every which way. He turned to see how long he'd have to wait for her, but to his surprise, the creature had spread her arms wide, the cloak flapping back to reveal a set of feathery wings, with gossamer dragonfly-like webs between her long arms. She was literally flying.
Well, shit, this is gonna be an interesting haul.
So began another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.
Okay, so I think you guys can see that this is going to be a very long series. This is part 1 of, I want to say, about 35 parts. So, if we need to take a break at some point and go do anything else, let me know. I'll find something else to read for you guys. There's always fantastic stuff being posted on the subreddit. Aside from that, this is going to take several months to finish. Let's see, 3 a week, so that's 12 a month. Yeah, it's going to take minimum of 3 months for us to actually get through. It's fantastic, and I love it. The videos are going to be very long for these next 3 months. So yeah, have a nice one, y'alls.